Hi everyone, just so you know, this video might contain spoilers for the first 5 hours or so of Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. Just letting you know ahead of time, you've been warned. Let's get on with the video. Well boys, here it is. Finally, we have our hands on Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, the latest game by From Software, the creators of Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and Bloodborne. So what I wanted to do was do a pretty relaxed video when I just talk about my thoughts of the game so far for those who have either started it and are interested in what I have to say about it, or those who might be on the fence and not sure if they want to get it. I just want to talk to you about my first 5 to 6 hours of my playing Sekiro, how I feel about it, what I think does work, what I think doesn't work, and basically why I will recommend that you buy this game, because it is amazing. So I think when I started playing Sekiro yesterday evening, I was interested straight away to feel like, does it feel like Dark Souls? Does it feel like Bloodborne? Does it feel like something completely different? Because unlike some of the other content creators on YouTube, I had not had a chance to play the game before it was officially released. So all I sort of had was their impressions of it and what they thought it felt like. Now, what I would say to you is that it does somewhat feel like Dark Souls, but at the same time it doesn't, and this is something I understand why certain people were saying this about the gameplay when they tried it. It does feel like Dark Souls, but at the same time it doesn't, and I think there's a few factors to that. Number one would obviously be the hugely increased mobility that you have. This is not a game that you're sort of trudging through, using up your stamina bar to sprint and then relaxing and getting it back and then sprinting again. This is, you can really play this at whatever pace you want. You can go as fast as you want, you can go slow and explore most of the areas that you go through, which is what I've been trying to do, trying to leave no stone unturned, find all the little secrets that that are easy to miss. But I must say the mobility is a huge, I wouldn't say improvement, but it's a huge innovation over the Souls formula. This sort of mobility would not work in Bloodborne or Dark Souls, but it does work here, and it's really a testament to how I think From Software thinks through game design and balances everything. Because if you had the mobility in this game and then applied it to like Bloodborne or Dark Souls, you would just be unstoppable. You would just be simply unstoppable at any real part of the game, because you just be able to zip around like crazy. But in Sekiro, especially at the start, you are extremely fragile. Like, you will survive maybe probably 3 to 4 light hits, but maybe 2 to 3 heavy hits, and then you're done. And I think in Dark Souls, maybe at the start it's kind of similar, but as you know, you start leveling up, it becomes different very quickly depending on what you pump your levels into. But here, the leveling system is so much different. So if you want to upgrade your vitality, your health, for instance, you basically have to kill 4 mini bosses, and these mini bosses, I would say, are the equivalent in difficulty to, say, a full-on boss in maybe early stages of Dark Souls, and then the actual bosses are like a refinement of that challenge, without being like, oh, it's far more difficult than the mini bosses. They're kind of difficult in different ways. There's more risk reward, I guess you would say, but there's more of a focus on the skills you've learned. Like, that's what the game's trying to focus on the entire time, is it's trying to further hone the new skills that you're taking on playing this game. I'll try not to bore you with kind of every intricacy of the combat, because I think people have already gone over that at this point. But the combat cycle, I would say, is something that is the biggest difference between Sekiro and Dark Souls. And what I mean by that is, a combat cycle in Dark Souls is you sort of go into a new area, you evaluate what enemies are around, if there's one or if there's several, and then you just like spam them with hits as fast as you can. If they manage to like go through and not be like not have their poise broken, they'll take a swing at you, you'll dodge, you'll hit their eye, like get through them with iframes, and then you'll continue doing that until they're dead. Now with Sekiro, it's so much different because number one, it's very easy for enemies to push through your strikes and hit you while you're trying to hit them, which affects both your posture meter as well as your health. Now, because of that, the combat cycle in Sekiro starts with, okay, what enemies are in the area ahead? How many are there? Can I take any of them out by stealth? Which one should I take out first? If they're in a clump, which one do I do the stealth kill on? Because as soon as I do that, they'll know exactly where I am. Then when you engage them in combat, do you start off by hitting them with the prosthetic tool, or do you hit them, just with the katana, or do you hit them with a shinobi skill like an overhead strike or a spinning strike, which you can equip one at a time? And then once you're doing that, when are you going to deflect hits? When are you going to push through? When are you going to dodge? When is a perilous attack going to come, which you're going to have to dodge if you have the skill for it and the ability to hit the timing? Do you withdraw at any point? Do you keep fighting on? Like, there's so much more to consider. Like, when I was watching the gameplay of people fighting, like, the chained ogre and stuff, I was like, and they were like, oh, like, I died, like, 20, 30 times. I was like, surely it can't be that hard. Like, I've played all these games to death. Like, surely it can't be that hard, but it is. And you know what? The iframes make such a big difference that you get in Dark Souls, because in this you have to watch every single move that it's getting thrown at you and evaluate what you're going to do so quickly, because more often than not you're going to have to deflect, but at the same time you're going to get a lot of moves which you need to jump out of the way of, or you have to like dodge to the side. But the dodge, again, it's like it doesn't give you that many iframes to get away with it, if any at all. You've really got to nail the timing, like, down to a tick. And the death punishments, I'll get to the death punishments later, but the death blows, basically, as you've probably seen by this point, most enemies have to receive a number of death blows, which is what you get after you work their posture meter down, and then you're able to finish them off. I'll talk about when you finish an enemy, when you beat a really challenging enemy in this, it's the exact same feeling you get when you beat like a really tough boss in Dark Souls for the first time, but it's even better. The feeling is even stronger in a way, because there's, that if you're progressing through this game with a bunch of other people around the world and whatever, you're pretty much up against that enemy with basically the same equipment as everybody else. Not everyone's power leveling their magic or their faith or their intelligence. Not everyone's power leveling their strength. They're getting their poise really high. Like, everybody is up against these challenges the same way, which does make them more rewarding. And the rewards you get for killing these enemies is worth a lot more than, say, souls would be in Dark Souls or Bloodborne with blood echoes that you just pump into levels. This is almost like you get materials, you get memories, like you get a whole bunch of different upgrading materials, which is really cool, because it really forces you to examine, okay, what am I going to upgrade next? Am I going to upgrade my ability to use my prosthetic, or am I going to upgrade my ability to remain in stealth without being seen? And these make a big difference in terms of what you're going to choose to upgrade, because death and its punishments are so brutal compared to Dark Souls or Bloodborne. See, it's one thing to be in Bloodborne and going through the Chalice dungeons and you're holding like a million blood echoes and you die, and then you try and go back to them but you're acting kind of silly, and then you die again and you lose them. Like, it's frustrating, you might get a bit pissed off, but then you're over it in like 2 seconds, because you can get that back pretty quickly if you're in like a really high level dungeon. But in Sekiro, it's different, because you're going to lose something no matter what you do if you die. So obviously there's a resurrection mechanic that many of you would be aware of. If you die one time, you can choose to resurrect yourself and continue on. But then if you die a second time, then you go back to the last sculptor's idol that you rested at. And when you do that, there's pretty much a 70% chance from the beginning of the game that you will lose half of all your experience points and half of all your currency, which is called sen. And that is brutal. So you basically have to continue accumulating experience to get the higher upgrades without dying and keep pushing on. And because even if you resurrect, if you die, I'm pretty sure even if you die and resurrect and live on, it attributes to something called dragon rot. And basically what dragon rot is every time you resurrect, because of the lore of the game and because you're basically you're a protector, a Sekiro, a retainer of this Lord Kuro, who has this divine blood which you've partaken of that allows you to resurrect. Every time you resurrect, it basically starts to infect the world around you, and the people in it start to become ill, which lowers your unseen aid, which basically dictates whether you will get your experience and currency back after dying, with which there's a slim chance of that happening. And eventually these characters may die. I don't know yet. I haven't played through the whole game, but it does add basically a big level of tension to the games. Like, if I keep pushing on, if I keep punishing these other characters by allowing myself to live longer, well, this could eventually kill them, and what implications that has for the story and whatever is it's very good by From Software, because it does create tension. You're constantly worried about these characters that have helped you, because the story is so much more central to this game instead of like Dark Souls, because the story is there, but it sort of runs parallel to the gameplay. This is like the gameplay and story are one, basically. And it does add a lot of trepidation. Like, do you resurrect? Do you just die? Do you risk it, or do you not? And it's a great step in the right direction, I think. So the other aspect is deflection. Now, parrying in Dark Souls was challenging, I would say, at the start, and I would say it's more challenging in other games in the series. Like Dark Souls 2 is quite challenging with its parrying. Dark Souls 1 is quite forgiving because the animations are quite telegraphed in a lot of cases. Dark Souls 3 can be difficult, can be easy depending on the fight. But basically you don't need to learn how to parry to beat any of these games. Like Bloodborne especially, like the windows for parrying are so wide that basically anybody can do it. Sekiro, it's kind of in the middle. It's not too difficult to deflect, but it's not too easy either. Like, you can miss deflections easily and then get hit a whole bunch of times and then die. In my last video as well, when I was talking a little bit about stealth and how that would play into it, it's not as central as I expected. It's sort of like an optional part of the game, because of course your assassinations are not silent, so they can alert other enemies in the vicinity very quickly. So there might be a good way to open up a fight, but it can be dynamic as well. Like, you might be fighting a boss and then run away, but then once they're walking back to their starting position, you can kind of do a stealth attack on them and take one of their death blow bars out, which can be very helpful, if not a little bit cheesy. But stealth, I would say at this point, I don't know how far people can go with it. Like, if you have like all the stealth skills, I'm pretty sure it becomes easier to sneak past different enemies. There might be a way to like take out enemies silently later on in the game, but right now it seems like a somewhat optional part of the game, because you can rush into the thick of battle, make no mistake, and get a whole bunch of death blows which essentially serve as iframes and keep fighting, but it does open you up to a lot of hits, and there are many instances where you just will not escape alive. So I want to talk a little bit about the story as well, and I think the story is really interesting so far. I think with samurai games lately, they've become a little bit formulaic. I don't think games have done them justice very well. Like Neo I didn't finish. Neo I did like, but I didn't finish, and I didn't really get into the story that much because it was a bit weird, it was a bit quirky. But Sekiro feels like very true to form. It almost just makes you think of those old drawings on scrolls that you've seen, like when it's got the samurai fighting and they've got weird body proportions, they're fighting dragons and things. Like, it feels like that brought to life, like oversized characters, way too big to be human, but somehow within the world it makes sense because it's somewhat fantastical, but it's somewhat set reality. It's kind of hitting this medium, and it's really beautiful, and it feeds into the aesthetic of the game. And in terms of the lore itself, like the story, it's telling a story of redemption, which is very good, because in Dark Souls, Bloodborne, like, is the motivation there, or are you just kind of playing through it because you love it and you're just kind of observing the world around you? But in Sekiro, you really are central to this world. You are well known, like you'll encounter characters who know who you are, and it's sort of a different feeling to have characters where your reputation precedes you, while in Bloodborne and Dark Souls you're just kind of like a nobody. But you've got characters from the beginning which are very compelling. You've got Lord Kuro, who's your lord that you're supposed to be looking after. You've got General Genichiro, I believe he's called, which is kind of the main antagonist of the game, who's taken away Lord Kuro. You've got the whole Ashina clan, which is trying to take over Ashina, I believe, but they're also trying to hold on to it because all these warring, I guess, tribes are trying to take over as well. You've got the sculptor, you've got Emma. It's kind of too much to take in at this point because obviously I haven't played the whole game, but the world that it takes place in is just so beautiful and well lit, and it's definitely the most beautiful world that I think From Software has designed so far. Like obviously Lothric, Anor Londo, Yharnam, like Boletaria, like they all have their charm, but it's also dark and gritty. Like Sekiro is bright and beautiful, but at the same time it's very dark and deadly, and I think they've nailed that balance really well in this game. And the last thing I want to talk about is basically rewiring your brain. Like I definitely went into this game thinking, oh, okay, I'm just going to play it like Dark Souls and then apply the Sekiro elements to that playstyle, but that was completely wrong. I think you have to go in completely blind, and if there are any elements like Dark Souls that you can fit into it, that's how it works. But you have to put Sekiro's gameplay as a primary spot of what you're trying to learn. Like I was pressing the dodge button all the time, I was pressing the jump button all the time, I was pressing the wrong button to talk to people, the wrong button to pick up items. Like it does take some going, and that might frustrate people at the start, but once it clicks, and it's just the same as Bloodborne. Obviously Dark Souls and Bloodborne have skills that are transferable in a much easier way, but Sekiro is like, it does click. So if you're having trouble with it, if you're not really enjoying it, just keep playing it and you will love it. I'm loving it so far. It's so exciting to play a game like this and not know it, and not know what's right around the corner, because what I feel like I've played so far is pretty much most of the content that was talked about or shown prior to release. So pretty much everything beyond now is going to be stuff that I've never seen before, and for that I'm very excited about. And yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Sekiro so far. Obviously I'm planning on making a few videos on Sekiro, quite a few hopefully, if it really is has enough material for that sort of thing. But if you're playing it, if there's anything you think I should cover or talk about, let me know in the comments. If you have any questions about Sekiro, if you haven't played it yet and you're willing to ask about, even if you're going to be spoiled, but you want to ask anyway, just ask down in the comments. I'm sure I or someone else will be able to help you out. And I hope you're all enjoying the game. If you haven't got Sekiro yet, definitely go out and buy it. And let's beat this game together. Until next time.